The Supercars Championship title decider is finally upon us, taking place this weekend on the streets of Adelaide, and as normal, I'm here to tell you everything you need to know before the cars hit the track. Just a quick note, apologies for no face cam today. I'm recording and editing this preview on quite a tight time schedule this week, so I didn't want to faff around with a green screen and stuff like that, but let's jump into it. So our battleground this weekend is the streets of Adelaide, an event that began its story with Formula 1 before Supercars took the reins. And while we nearly lost this track during COVID, it is back and set to stay for the foreseeable future, and of course plays host to the finale this weekend. It's a great circuit, 3.2 kilometers in length, or 2 miles if you prefer that metric, with 14 turns in a clockwise direction, and the risk rating around here is extreme. The lap begins with a reasonably short run into the first sequence of corners, the famous center chicane, which is the scene of plenty of drama on the opening lap, no matter what category is racing through here. After that, you have turn 3, which hasn't been much of a corner in recent years, but with the less downforce on Gen 3 could be a bit more of a handful than normal. After that, you get to turns 4, 5, 6, and 7, the staircase section. This area sees some great switchback racing. Despite being fairly mundane 90-degree corners, they just seem to attract good battles. And then down the back straight, you have to negotiate the infamous turn 8, and we're going to talk about that car killer in a few more moments. But after that, you have one of the big overtaking opportunities, the hairpin of turn 9, before an interesting little sequence that's a bit more flowy than the rest of the street circuit. Turns 10, 11, 12, 13, and then finally 14, which comes up on you quite quickly, and some straight clean braking is really important to finish off the lap well. If you're watching Supercars around this incredible circuit for the first time, or are heading trackside and keen to know where a good spot to set up might be, well, I've got 3 spots for you to watch as per normal. The first one is that center chicane. As I mentioned, it is very tight on lap 1. They're also going to have to watch out for their track limits through here, and they normally have tire bundles on the apexes to try and discourage curb overuse, but they did take those tires away at the Gold Coast, so I'm curious to see what they do for Adelaide and if they follow suit. Nevertheless, always exciting to watch the cars through here, and we'll see how they go with Gen 3. The next spot to watch is, of course, the famous turn 8. I strongly suspect this one's always the first grandstand to sell out, and I believe it is sold out already. This one is a wild ride no matter what car you're in or what session, even a practice cooldown lap. This one is hairy. It's incredibly quick, 200 k's plus into the corner, and you've got to carry a lot of speed through here. You can't chicken out because it hurts your exit speed, and if you're slow on the exit, it exposes you down at the hairpin. And speaking of the hairpin, that is our final spot to watch. Despite being one of the wider sections of the racetrack, we actually often see botched overtakes and even a few pile-ups in here as well. Especially on the opening lap and safety car restarts, this one can be a bit of a hot zone for drama, so that's another one to keep your eye on. But honestly, this whole place is lined with concrete. It's got tricky corners, close barriers. It is just full of excitement. You'll need to keep your eyes peeled absolutely everywhere. So when can you see Supercars on track? Well, the first opportunity will be Thursday afternoon for practice 1 in what should be fairly decent weather conditions. The same can't be said for Friday though. Some rain expected, which could be a bit of a curveball for this event. Supercars will be on track for practice 2 and qualifying for the first race of the weekend as well. That one will set the grid from 10th below, and of course the top 10 will proceed to the shootout, which brings us to Saturday. We'll have one final practice session that morning before the Supercars get into their top 10 shootout for those that made it. That will set the full grid for the first race, which will be 78 laps around this awesome circuit, and that one gets underway at 3:20 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Just take note of the time zones there, it's not local times. Then come Sunday, we kind of do it all over again, except we've got quali, shootout, and race all on the same day. Qualifying for the second race of the weekend, that will get underway at 10:45 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight, and top 10 shootout later that afternoon before the final race of the weekend at a fairly similar time to Saturday, albeit a few minutes earlier. And that will wrap the action not only for the weekend, but the entire Supercars Championship. A little bit of weather potentially on Saturday as well, I should have highlighted, but Sunday should be pretty good with partly cloudy conditions. So what have been the key Supercars headlines since the last event on the streets of Surfers Paradise? Well, there's a bit going on. Firstly, Supercars Supercars have finally released the 2024 calendar. Some surprises in there, mostly disappointment for me personally, and I plan to do a dedicated video on that one after the season wraps up. As for other stories, there will be dedicated trackside commentary this weekend, which is a bit of a change from most events. This was something Supercars used to do, have a separate team to give the commentary for fans trackside over the PA system. At most events, they've just been feeding through the official broadcast commentary from Neil Crompton and Mark Scaife. And yeah, I'm curious to see how this one goes as well, because personally I've really enjoyed the broadcast commentary and that coming through to trackside as well. But yeah, there's pros and cons of that one, so once again, maybe a video for the off season. We'll see how it goes this weekend in Adelaide. Otherwise, in terms of other news, Taupo, that event seems to be well put together. They've already announced all the support categories for that one, and of course, tickets are on sale for that event if you're keen to go. The live pit lane concept for 2024 has been confirmed as going ahead, so that means that the pit order will not be determined by the finishing order of this year's Teams Championship. It will actually change as the Teams Championship fluctuates from event to event, which will shuffle up the order, give some people some new neighbors on the regular, and yeah, not a cataclysmic change for the series, but yeah, I'm curious to see how this one goes, and personally, I'm keen to see it tried. One of the big surprises is that Jack Smith will be finishing up as a full-time Supercars driver, at least for the foreseeable future, at the end of Adelaide this weekend. Zach Best is expected to be a late call-up to that seat for 2024. Adrian Burgess, speaking of departures, he is leaving his role as the GM of Motorsport for Supercars. He'll depart that early in 2024 after the wind tunnel testing completes for Supercars. And Tim Edwards, it was announced today, will be taking that role, moving away from his role with the team, which he's had for nearly 2 decades, and will move into a prominent role, actually leading the sport as a whole, not just the single team. And there have been some further management changes behind the scenes at Supercars in some pretty senior roles. I won't get too much into the weeds of that one right now, but yeah, plenty of change happening as we finish up the inaugural season of Gen 3. And that brings us to Gen 3 Watch. Nothing in the way of change to the cars between Gold Coast and Adelaide this weekend, at least at the time of recording. However, plans for next year are well underway. A Camaro and a Mustang have arrived in the USA for aero testing, which will get underway in the coming weeks, and transient dyno testing is also expected to start soon. And hopefully both of those things mean that parity is far less of an argument, or far less of a severe and frequent argument in 2024. We will see. Once again, I think a video I will have to do in the off season. Let's switch our focus back to the immediate action, however, and some of the storylines to follow this weekend in Adelaide. Let's begin with the big one, the headline. The title battles are still alive for both drivers and teams championships. They are heavily weighted towards Brody Kostecki and Erebus, and for me personally, I'm not going to be doing too much number crunching unless Brody or Erebus have a bit of a mare of a weekend with a DNF or terrible finishing position on Saturday. I think only at that time I'm really going to start focusing on the numbers and the fine margins there, but it is Adelaide. Plenty of things can go wrong and potentially give us a nail-biting finish. My second storyline to follow is, will the Mustang form continue from Surfers Paradise? The Ford camp have had a terrible season with lots of debate and arguments and frustrations around parity this year. That seemed to change in the Gold Coast with 2 race victories, albeit by the skin of their teeth. So I'm curious to see how they go around the streets of Adelaide, which is quoted to be a little bit more aero dependent, which has been one of the key pain points with parity this year. So we'll see how they go. And on the topic of Adelaide, it is a car breaker. This place does damage cars both mechanically in terms of component failure and of course some big shunts as well. So we're going to see plenty of pain this weekend. Even the Gen 2 cars had plenty of power steering issues and suspension problems around here. So we'll see how Gen 3 fares. And then finally, we have some farewells this weekend. This list could actually be quite long, so I've just picked a few here. But Jack Smith, as I said, is finishing up in the Brad Jones Racing team, at least as a full-time driver. Scott Pye is leaving his full-time seat as well at the end of this year, being a co-driver next year. And of course, Tim Edwards leaving his role as the boss of Tickford Racing after nearly 2 decades to assume that management role at Supercars. And there's plenty of stories like this with drivers finishing up full-time, switching teams, all that sort of stuff. So everyone wants to leave Adelaide with a good result. Alrighty, let's start finishing up with some predictions. Now, as always, these are just a bit of fun. Don't take them too seriously. However, I like to see what I can throw out there and very rarely get right. Let's begin with my championship predictions. This isn't a bold one, but I am predicting Brody Kostecki and Erebus to win their respective championships. However, I don't think it's going to be a smooth ride. I do think we're going to get a scare for Brody Kostecki. Not wishing anything bad on him, but Adelaide, as I said, it can bite you. The weather could play a role as well early in the weekend. So I'm predicting either a mechanical scare or a poor race result on Saturday that could make that championship a bit closer than it is going into the event. And then finally, I'm going to predict a great show and that we're going to get at least one grandstand finish, a really close race result, hopefully between the Mustang and the Camaro. That would just be awesome to finish off this year's championship. Let's jump into some of your predictions, and you may have noticed Shane van Gisbergen missing from my list of drivers saying farewell this weekend as he's heading stateside next year. The reason I left him out is because he was the topic of many predictions this weekend. The first one here from MCW saying, I reckon Brody will win the championship, but Shane will win the race on Sunday and get one last burnout. Yeah, this is a good point. I think in terms of feeling good or feel good moments from this weekend, I think this would be the perfect balance. It would take quite a lot for SVG to overturn the championship, and I think a lot of people are backing Brody and Erebus purely because they have been underdogs for so many years. A championship both on the teams and drivers front would be a first for both these groups, so I'm really keen for them to get the win overall. However, I am keen for an exciting finish, and of course it would be great to see Shane van Gisbergen finish on a high, even if it is just a race winner, not the championship. It would be great to see him do one of his signature burnouts to say farewell to Supercars. The second prediction from SB787 saying Brody to win the title. SVG has problems. Curbs destroy the Gen 3 cars and turn 8 becomes even more destructive because of less downforce. Yeah, turn 8 is the one I want to talk about here. It's going to be really interesting. With the lower downforce and drag levels, they should be entering at a higher speed. And I feel like a lot of turn 8 crashes in recent years have actually been from aero wash, which should in theory be less of a factor. But the track is so tight, the speeds are so high, I'm still sure it is going to cause some problems. And of course, because they've got less downforce, the cars are more likely to break away going through this corner, especially if they strike that inside curb. And if you've watched Supercars around here for any period of time, you know that outside wall is never far away. We'll see how these Gen 3 machines go. Then the final prediction here from Max Jones, predicting a few things here. The one I really want to call out is Walkinshaw and Andretti United to have a brilliant weekend. These guys really need a pick-me-up. Nick Percat is one of those drivers finishing up, at least with his current team. He's still going to be full-time next year with Matt Stone Racing. However, I'm sure he's going to try and finish a fairly challenging stint with WAU on a high. And of course, Taz Monster, he is a driver with so much potential, hasn't really been able to do much with it this year. So I'm sure after that Mustang's improved performance, he'll be looking for a good result as well. Let's have a look at those numbers. As I said, Brody Kostecki fairly safe out in front, but things could very easily change around here. He is leading the way over Shane van Gisbergen. Will Brown a little bit further back, or quite a bit further back actually. Brock Feeney not too far away from him though, so the battle for third in the championship could still very much be on, perhaps even more than the top two positions. And despite a challenging year, Chaz Molster has done a great job, I think, to still hold down that fifth position. On the team side of things, this one is actually, again, more likely to change than the drivers potentially. Erebus do lead the way by quite a comfortable margin though, followed by Red Bull. Brad Jones Racing there in third. I was actually surprised to see them so far up. Shell V-Power Racing Team, they've had a late race or a late season bounce back to put them up the order, and Tickford in fifth. It is, of course, not just about supercars, though. Adelaide, the supercars, when they roll up there, it is just a great racing show from start to finish, and that is helped with some support categories. The Dunlop Series is there with a championship on the line. V8 Super Utes for, I believe, a non-championship round. Those guys are just rocking up for some action and fun, which will be great to watch. Porsche Carrera Cup, GT World Challenge Australia, Touring Car Masters, and S5000 complete the bill. Plenty of action to keep us entertained. And with that, we will bring the show to a close. Thank you so much for your support throughout this season. We've still got one round of action left, and I'll be sure to join you guys on the other side of this weekend to recap everything that went down. And during the off season, I plan to take the opportunity to do some more discussion content as well, hopefully getting you a video every couple of weeks, just talking about different aspects of the sport, some storylines that have emerged that I just didn't have time to cover during the season itself. And of course, we'll be looking ahead to the 2024 action as the new season draws closer as well. But until then, enjoy this weekend's action. Be sure to let me know your thoughts and weekend ratings as I put those polls up as everything progresses, and I will see you guys in the next video.